Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Sagar, what are we doing?
We have an amazing show for everybody today. We have Bob Cusack, the Hill's editor-in-chief. We have Philosophy Tube. He's going to stop by and talk about some interesting stuff. We've got a healthcare specialist to talk about and break down Medicare for All, plus some very interesting new polling out of Iowa showing Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard around the same position.
Nice.
Not so top tier anymore. All that coming up today on Rising. Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, I know you guys were busy watching our coverage of the debate here, so you may have missed Chris Cillizza's debate winners and losers over on CNN. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will deny you no longer. Apparently, per Cillizza, it was Mayor Pete who won this week's debate. Here, in part, is what he said. The South Bend mayor had one clear goal in the debate: hit Elizabeth Warren on her support for Medicare for All. Cillizza continues, from beginning to end, Buttigieg was a dominant and commanding force. Yes, some will say he was mean, but debates and primaries are about drawing contrasts. Hilariously, in the last debate back in September, Julian Castro was declared by Cillizza to be the big debate loser. Why? He was too mean. Here's Cillizza using almost exactly the same construction to draw the completely opposite conclusion at that time. Cillizza said, the former San Antonio mayor had a clear plan going into this debate: go after Biden. But apparently, while Buttigieg was commanding and definitely not mean, after all, this is a primary, Castro got it all wrong. Per Cillizza, the attack wound up making Biden look sympathetic and made Castro look small. In fairness, though, it's not only Cillizza who found much to admire in Mayor Pete's performance. It was also highly rated by the New York Times, where Will Wilkinson exclaimed that he went to the mat for moderation, waging precision attacks on pie-in-the-sky radicalism to his left. Dylan Matthews over at Vox writes, Pete Buttigieg emerged on Tuesday night as the marquee candidate of the centrist Democratic Party, and he did so by emulating a political move from an unlikely model, Bernie Sanders. All right. And the always dependable Jennifer Rubin over at Washington Post wrote a whole column fawning over both Pete and Amy Klobuchar's quote-unquote standout performances. Did these people watch the same debate that I did? Pete was praised for launching the same dumb Medicare for All attack that we've heard from someone or another at literally every debate, and for obliging the CNN moderators by continuing the grudge match with Beto O'Rourke that no one wanted or asked for. But maybe my favorite take was from Van Jones, who described the desire for everyone to have health care the way that every other developed country does as wokeonomics, and then went on to outright predict the field would narrow to Warren versus Pete.
Klobuchar, it was amazing to see the moderates say, you know what, enough. We're tired of the wokeonomics. We want to actually have a voice here. And I thought that Pete, you got a new candidate in this race, Pistol Pete, passionate Pete, not the polite Pete. He was tough on Syria. He was tough on guns. He went back at folks. So I thought that you might see a matchup going forward if Biden fades between a Pete and a Warren. It would be very, very interesting.
Pistol Pete versus Warren the selfie queen. There is no doubt that this would be the dream matchup of every post-grad holding, Harvard envying, McKinsey adjacent pundit in the land. Just imagine the plans and the civility. No word on what would have happened to Bernie and his 1.4 million donors and $33 million in the bank, to say nothing of his many working class supporters, or for that matter, where the older black voters who have solidly supported Biden would have magically vanished too. Guys, I think we have enough evidence to officially declare that the media has decided to pull Mayor Pete off the gurney and resuscitate his failing presidential run. After all, Biden is looking kind of sad in his presentation and pretty pathetic in his fundraising. And for heaven's sakes, we all know that some moderate or another is supposed to be able to compete. With millions in the bank and a few polls showing him performing well in Iowa, Pete's been called up from the bench to star in the role of centrist savior of the Democratic Party. The theory of the case being offered by Pete's campaign and various uncritically thinking pundits is that as Biden fades, Pete will benefit. After all, they're both moderates, and so moderate voters leaving Biden will create a visual data analysis of similarly moderate candidates and circle the nearest like-minded compatriot. There's only one problem, one flaw in the McKinsey matrix. This is not remotely how voters choose their candidates. The fact is that Pete and Biden do not appeal to the same group of voters. Namely, Biden owes his strong positioning in the polls to older African-American voters, a demographic group with which Pete polls somewhere around 0%. In a recent YouGov Economist poll, only 12% of black voters said they were even considering the remote possibility of voting for Buttigieg versus 64% for Biden and 47% for Sanders. Only 1% actually said that they were actually planning to vote for Pete, as opposed to 37% for Biden. And in the same poll, in terms of class, Biden has a relative strength with working class voters, while Buttigieg has his worst performance with working class voters. But you know who does share similar coalition strengths? Warren and Buttigieg. In other words, if Pete were to rise, it would most likely come at the expense of Elizabeth Warren. And so, dear friends, I'm afraid the Woodstock of technocrats, Warren versus Pete, wonk-on-wonk violence is not to be. Don't bother trying to break it to our friends at CNN and The Times and The Post. They're too busy doing the important journalistic work of attributing Sanders' best debate lines to Warren. Yes, that really happened. Slamming the left for their wokeonomics and asking hard-hitting questions about friendship. Sagar, it was kind of funny because we were obviously busy doing our own thing here after the fact to go and watch the debate coverage and be like, wait, what?
It's literally an alternate universe. I have a lot of respect for Van Jones, but Pistol Pete, that is one of the most cringeworthy segments I've ever seen on national television.
I watched that, I was stunned. And Pete versus Warren, like that, if you even think about that for 5 seconds, it makes no sense.
That's the thing is, so many people look at this through ideology. They don't actually look at what voters tell you exactly what they think in the data, in the polling data. First, second, third choices. We know what it says. And it makes complete intuitive cultural sense. But the problem is so many of these people on TV are part of that bubble that they can't look out of it. So they look at everybody the same way that they think about themselves.
Right, and that's exactly right. And so for them, it makes complete intuitive cultural sense that the two candidates, Warren and Pete, who this sort of like affluent liberals love and check all the boxes in terms of the resumes and talk in this really smart way and have all these plans, like it makes total sense to them that they would be the two that would be left standing, even though that's not what the voters are remotely saying.
They're actually mutually exclusive. It's a zero-sum game between
the two of them.
So,
exactly. Next up on Rising, just 24 hours after the death of Congressman Elijah Cummings, what might be the impact of his passing on congressional business? And also that Pelosi-Trump showdown was certainly something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, a light has been shined on Senator Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax proposal. The Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack, he joins us to talk about all of that when Rising continues.